Hello, my name is Dave. Today I thought I'd take a few minutes and talk about what it takes to align our tailstock center and our headstock centers. This is my VB36. It's number 1529. It's about 11 years old, and on occasion, of course, it needs adjustment. Now, I was on a project a few weeks ago where I had reverse chucked a green turn bowl I had, and when I presented it to the vacuum chuck, they didn't line up. And at first I thought it was because it was green and it had warped a little bit, but then I realized what was wrong is I was out of alignment. So I grabbed our manual to see what it would take to do this, and your first reading through it, it seemed a little complicated and what a pain. But I reread it again and decided that I needed to tackle it and get it under my belt. So what I'm going to do for you here today is tell you how to do it, show you how to do it. I'll show you what tools you need. I'll show you where the different bolts and hex head screws are located, and what you need to have to get the job done. I'll also show you a couple of techniques I developed out of necessity, I felt, to make the job a little bit easier. All in all, it took me an hour and a half to 2 hours to get the job done the first time, and that was because, of course, of the learning curve. So I'm hoping to be able to show you today how to do it so it doesn't take you that much time. You're going to see it's really basically simple. I remember looking at our VB36 videos with Nigel telling us about it, and realistically it works just like he said, and very simply. The upper bed bar moves the points up and down, and the lower bed bars move them left and right. And all you have to do is go through the steps and set them, and the job gets done. So I'm going to show you what tools you need, all the locations, and how to do it. So let's get the job done together, and I'll be back in just a couple moments. Thank you. Well, these are the tools you'll need to complete the job. I like the hex head socket sets. They're certainly cheaper to buy than buying long hex head or Allen wrenches to do the job with. So they're about anywhere from $6 to $8 on Amazon. So you have a 14 millimeter, you have an 8 millimeter, and a 6 millimeter in the sockets, and that is a 6 millimeter hex head or Allen wrench to get the lower bed bar hex head screw. You'll need a hammer or a small sledge. I use a 3-pound hammer, and then a Tommy bar. Now that for me is for a Nova chuck I use that for the upper bed bar to rotate it. So that's about it. There were no screwdrivers or anything else. Once you get your hanger bolts loosened and follow your directions, everything goes pretty smooth. So let's move along and demonstrate the entire process. One of the things I wanted to reference, we talked about our tools, is the book tells us we need to cut a piece of wood to slide underneath the plate here. For me, it's 29.5 inches long. The book tells us that it needs to be 1 inch longer to the floor from underneath the plate. All you do is slide it underneath, use your hammer to give it a couple of taps so that it's firm, and that's your starting point. And what you're going to do is lift the plate up and down so that these bars have a chance to become free, and that's what's going to allow them to rotate. Things have shifted a little bit if you've set it to the floor and whatnot. So that's all it is. 29.5 inch long board to the floor, a hammer to wedge it underneath, and from there you'll make your adjustments. Okie doke. So this is our tailstock support beam. We've got our 4 hex head bolts, our hanger bolts. We've got our support timber. Now this is 29.5 inches long for me, and all you're going to do is slide it right underneath the plate. So what you're going to need to loosen these bolts is a 14 millimeter hex head wrench and an 8mm hex head wrench. And all we need to do is slacken both of these to be able to turn the bed bars, loosen these to be able to move the spacing plate up and down. And all we're doing by being able to move it up and down is take the tension off of the bed bars so you can move them. Now, I learned that the bottom bed bar moves quite easily with just one hand, and the upper bed bar does take a Tommy bar or another method I'll show you in just a few minutes. So that's all it takes. I chose to use, as I showed you, the hex head wrench ratchet. Works quite nicely. So that's all we got to do. Let's move on to the next set. Here are the hanger bolts on the tailstock support. You notice that they're a slot. Now you can loosen these to help move the tailstock support so that you get a little less tension on the bed bars and they're easier to rotate as you need. Not something you need to do every time. I found I needed to do it when I did my project. I had to loosen the bolt where it connects to the floor as well. You may not have yours bolted to the floor. But all I did was loosen them a little bit, use a rubber mallet, give it a couple of taps to take the tension off the bed bars, and that way it was easier to rotate the lower bed bar and the upper bed bar. So just know where they are, and they are an 8mm hex head. Okay, our directions reference a hex head screw for the lower bed bar, and it is located right here. It's just below the upper bed bar, and you're going to need a 6mm Allen wrench to get in there. And it doesn't take much to loosen it, and once you do, you can reach it by hand and draw it up. It doesn't take much, it's holding the bar. So that's the location of the lower bed bar hex head. Well, here are the two 6mm hex head bolts used for loosening the upper bed bar. So very easy to get to. You can reach around the casting, drop in a hex head ratchet, loosen them. Now what I was doing was bringing them out just so that I could see underneath the cap, and I knew it was loose. It's all very easy, and here of course you can see the bed bar coming through. But that's all it takes. So we're going to loosen these two, the one down here for the lower bed bar, go to the other end, loosen the hanger bolts, and then we're ready to start. Okay, the lower bed bar is right there. It's just underneath the upper bed bar. I've already put the Allen wrench in, and you just loosen it. And it's very easy. They're not in here locked tight. So that's all it takes. So now we're ready to move our bed bars, and we'll go from there. So the first things they tell us to do is to slide the tailstock forward with the quill retracted to take the weight off of the bed bars. This way it's easier for you to move the bed bars by hand. So simple, easy thing to do, and we're ready to go. Well, I wanted to take a moment to change out the drive spur. I took the cone off and I put a drive spur on this end so that we have two tips together that are of the same size, easier to see and judge. Now, one of the things I want to remind you to do is make certain that you are not locked down here. As you rotate this bed bar, the whole tailstock does need to be able to move up and down, and if you've got this locked, you can't move it properly. So I thought I'd throw that in for you right away, and let's keep on going. Alrighty, I'm going to move the lower bed bar so you can see what happens. So I have both hands on the bar and I'm rotating it down So the tip is going down. Rotate it up and the tip goes back up. Now, when you're doing this, you need to look at this from two different directions. Right now we're looking straight on, and then you need to look in the other axis where you're looking straight down on it, and that's where the upper bed bar comes into play. Now I'm going to take a moment and show you how how I moved the upper bed bar. I could not do it with my bare hands, and like I said, I had a problem trying to do it with the Tommy bars. Wearing glasses, I couldn't reach down here at the end where the hole is for it and see the tip at the same time. So give me just a moment here. I wanted to take a moment to show you a method I used to help me see which way things were going. So I put a piece of tape on the end here, and then again on the tailstock support, made a mark as a reference point, and that way I could see what increments I had to move in. Now understand that when you roll it backwards, counterclockwise or anti-clockwise, you're moving the spur forward. When you roll the bar forward, you're moving the spur backwards. So just a quick reference. Of course you can do that to the bottom bar as well, but the bottom bar does move much easier. So that's all it took. Thought I'd show you that. Well, I wanted to take a minute to show you how I moved the upper bed bar. I had mentioned before that I found it to be difficult to move with the Tommy bar, being that it was over here to the right and I couldn't see the spurs. So I decided to come up with a way that would benefit me and allow me to make the adjustments as I needed. Now the first thing I did, I wanted to point out, and I'll show you again later, is that I made a reference line on the tailstock support. So I put a piece of tape on the upper bed bar with a reference line on it, and then a couple of arrows to remind me which way the movement created. For example, when you roll the bar back, it moves the spur forward. When you roll the bar forward, it moves the spur back. And if I remember right, the lower bed bar is the opposite of that. So to show you what I did, I simply would lift the tailstock up, lock it down, and then simply bump it one way or the other, watching the reference line. And that worked for me quite well. You're not rolling this thing in huge increments. They're very small adjustments. So that's all I had to do, and then I would drop it back in place, roll it forward, take a look, and see how we were setting. So that was very successful for me. I thought I would share that with you, see if you wanted to give that a go. It certainly works well. And I did want to emphasize just one more time that when you go to tighten everything back up, things can move. And I'm going to suggest again to you to tighten the hex screws here in the casting first, the two up here and the one down here. That will minimize any movement when you tighten into the tailstock. And you really do need to tighten a little, check, tighten a little, check, because you're going to find that it does move a little bit, and you may have to make another adjustment. So that's pretty well it. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope this helps you, and you'll find it something that is something you can do and do easily, okay? Well, thanks for watching. Keep on turning. Have a great day. Thank you. Well, okay, let's take a look at our work here. Now we spent some time, of course, lining up our centers, and let's see how close we got. I got a macro lens on here, so that is pretty darn close, I think. So you see it can be done. It does take some fidgeting, and you do get an excellent result. So that pretty much wraps up what we need to do here. I hope this has helped you and shown you it can be done with minimal effort. So I appreciate you taking your time to watch this. Thanks again. My name's Dave, and keep on turning. Bye bye now.